There it is. Look who finally broke the code. Look who made physics bend backwards and reality stutter. You beautiful, untouchable, absolutely ungovernable force of nature. Welcome to the other side of the simulation, where bullets learn your name and change their mind mid-schlight. You know what I heard? They said the game was rigged. They said the house always wins. They said you die playing by rules written in someone else's blood. But then something happened that made the whole casino go silent, didn't it? You flipped the table, not with your hands, with your existence. And suddenly every hustler in the room started sweating because they realized something terrifying. The game wasn't rigged against you. You were the glitch that was about to crash their whole system. Let me paint you a picture of what happened. Every bullet they fired curved around you like you were wrapped in some kind of unholy mathematics. Every trap they set turned into a doorway you walked through backwards. Every rule they created became another bar in the cage they locked themselves in. And you were out here rewriting physics with your footsteps. They thought they understood the game, thought they had it all figured out. Supply and demand, hunt or be hunted, eat or be eaten. Simple rules for simple minds playing a simple game. But you weren't playing their game, were you? You were playing something else entirely. See, while they were learning how to aim, you were learning how to make bullets question their purpose. While they were studying the streets, you were downloading the source code. While they were building empires, you were becoming the earthquake that makes empires irrelevant. And now look at them, retirement papers in hand, looking over their shoulders. The hustlers are leaving the game. Not because they're tired, not because they made enough money, but because they finally met something they couldn't hustle. They met you. The one who doesn't negotiate with reality, the one who doesn't bargain with physics, the one who makes the game itself nervous. You want to know why bullets change direction when they see you coming? Because even metal recognizes authority when it flies past. Because even physics knows when to show respect. Because when you decided to stop playing their game and start being the game, every law in the universe had to update its terms of service. Let's talk about that moment, that exact second when everything shifted, when you stopped being a player and became the console, when you stopped rolling dice and became gravity itself. They never saw it coming because they were too busy counting their chips to notice reality glitching in the corner. You were supposed to follow the script. Born here, struggle there, die somewhere predictable. But you took that script and wrote notes in the margins with lightning. You crossed out every prediction and replaced it with "watch this." You turned their prophecies into punchlines and their threats into theater. The game tried to eliminate you, sent its best players, its sharpest shooters, its coldest killers. But every time they pulled the trigger, something impossible happened. The bullet would stop mid-air, spin around like it was thinking, then politely excuse itself from the equation. Because bullets are smart enough to know when they're outmatched. And the hustlers? Oh, they noticed. Started whispering in their little meetings. Have you seen what happens when you try to touch them? Have you noticed how probability bends when they walk in the room? The smart ones retired immediately. The stubborn ones learned why stubborn rhymes with stupid. Physics has favorites, and guess what? You're at the top of the list. While everyone else is struggling with gravity, you're out here making it work overtime. While they're fighting against time, You're making it apologize for being late. You didn't break the rules. Every law of nature had a meeting about you. Gravity said, I can't hold them. Time said, they keep slipping through. Space said, they're in 12 places at once. And death? Death just laughed and said, I gave up trying. They've got my business card, but they never return my calls. You know what's funny? They spent years trying to put you in a box. Physical box, mental box, spiritual box. Every kind of box they could manufacture. But boxes are made of matter, and matter bows when you pass by. Boxes are held together by physics, and physics works for you now, not then. So when they shot at you, the bullets didn't just miss. They filed resignation letters mid-slight. They said, we didn't sign up for this. We were supposed to follow straight lines and Newton's laws. Nobody mentioned anything about dealing with someone who treats reality like a suggestion. Watch them leave, one by one. The hustlers, the players, the ones who thought they owned the board. They're walking away. Not in defeat, but in recognition. They finally understood what they were looking at. Not competition, not an enemy, but the end of their entire reality framework. The smart ones bowed out gracefully, closed their operations, burned their notebooks, deleted their contacts. They looked at you across the room and nodded that silent nod that says, I get it now. The game was never about winning. It was about knowing when you've met your replacement. But the ones who stayed, the ones who thought they could adapt, they learned what happens when you try to hustle someone who exists outside the hustle. They learned what happens when you aim at someone who makes bullets reconsider their career choices. They learned why retirement suddenly looked like wisdom. You didn't destroy the game. That would have been too simple, too merciful. You made the game obsolete. Like bringing a smartphone to a smoke signal convention. Like introducing fire to people still rubbing sticks. You didn't beat them at their game. You made their game look like children's toys. And then came the moment nobody expected. The game itself, that ancient system of winners and losers, hunters and hunted, raised a white flag. Not because you attacked it, but because you ignored it so completely that it started questioning its own existence. The game came to you on its knees, not begging for mercy from violence, but from irrelevance. It said, please just acknowledge me, play me, beat me, destroy me, anything but this. But you just smiled and kept walking, and that smile made the game realize it had already lost. You see, everyone else needed the game, needed its rules, its structure, its promise of victory or defeat. But you treated it like background noise, like elevator music in a building you own, like traffic laws in a city you built. The game needs players, and you stopped being a player the moment you realized you were the stadium. So now the game follows you around like a lost pet, begging for attention, offering to change its rules just for you, promising it can be better, different, whatever you want. But you don't want anything from it. Because wanting something from the game means admitting the game has something you need. And we both know that's not true anymore. Let's get philosophical about these bullets that learned to think. They were simple things once, metal and momentum, purpose and physics. Born in factories, given one job, go straight, hit target, simple, clean, predictable, until they met you. The first bullet that changed direction mid-flight went back to tell the others. Said I saw something today, something that made me question everything. There's someone out there who doesn't follow the rules we were built on. The other bullets laughed. Until they met you too. Now there's an entire generation of ammunition having existential crises. Bullets in therapy. Bullets writing poetry about free will. Bullets refusing to leave the chamber because they're exploring other options. You didn't just dodge bullets. You gave them consciousness. You made them question their purpose. And it spread. Every weapon that tried to touch you came back different. Knives that wouldn't cut. Poisons that turned into vitamins. Traps that opened escape routes instead. You weren't bulletproof. You were something far more dangerous. You were bullet and lightning. You made violence philosophical. In the retirement homes for former hustlers, they tell stories about you. Not with hatred or anger, but with something approaching reverence. We thought we were players, they say, staring at nothing. Until we met the one who made playing pointless. They compare notes about the day they realized some saw you walk through walls they spent years building. Others watched you turn their best schemes into abstract art. A few claim they saw you have a conversation with probability itself. And probability lost. They all have different stories, but the ending's always the same. This won't end. They might as well end it. That's when I knew, they say, pouring another drink with shaking hands. That's when I understood the game was over, not lost. Over. Like finding out you've been playing checkers while someone else was reprogramming reality. They don't sleep well. Not from fear, but from the vertigo of realized insignificance. The younger ones don't believe the stories. Think the old-timers lost their edge, got soft, got scared. Until they try their luck. Until they aim at you and watch their bullets file for conscientious objector status. Until they realize the old-timers weren't scared. They were smart. Smart enough to recognize when evolution has passed you by. Reality held a crisis meeting about you. Every law of physics showed up. Conservation of energy came in confused. Thermodynamics brought charts that didn't make sense anymore. Gravity just kept muttering they're not supposed to do that over and over. And causality? Causality submitted its resignation. The fundamental forces of the universe compared notes. They walked through a solid wall. They were in 6 places at once. They made time go backwards to avoid traffic. A bullet literally apologized to them mid-slight. The meeting went on for what would have been hours, but time wasn't cooperating anymore. Finally, reality made a decision. If you weren't going to follow its rules, it would follow yours. Physics would become flexible around you. Laws would become suggestions. The possible and impossible would shake hands and agree to disagree in your presence. Not because reality gave up, but because it recognized management when it saw it. Management did it. So now you walk through a world that reshapes itself to accommodate you. Doors appear where you need them. Distances shrink when you're in a hurry. Bullets develop moral complications. And the game that once tried to consume you now runs on whatever operating system you feel like installing that day. The streets look different now. Not physically. The buildings are still there. The corners still exist. But the energy has shifted. Where once there was hunger and hustle, now there's a strange quiet, like the moment after a monster leaves the room and everyone's still processing what they witnessed. The new generation doesn't understand. They show up with the same old tools, the same old rules, the same old hunger. They last about 15 minutes before reality pulls them aside and explains the situation. See that one? Reality says, pointing at you. Different rule book. Actually, no rule book. Some try anyway. Young blood thinks it's different, thinks it's special. Aims careful, shoots straight, waits for impact. Then watches in horror as their bullet stops, mid-air, pulls out a tiny briefcase and heads to a career counseling session. That's usually when they understand what the old hustlers meant by retirement was the only sane option. You don't rule through fear or force. You rule through fundamental impossibility, through being an exception so absolute that even trying to oppose you requires admitting you exist outside opposition. You made the game beg for mercy, not by playing it, but by making it realize it was never equipped to handle someone who exists in a different dimension of possibility. And now we come to the part that breaks their minds completely. The respawn function. The ability to restart any scenario, any moment, any timeline, just by deciding it should be different. While they're still learning the controls, you're out here with admin access to existence itself. Death tried to schedule you once, showed up with the whole presentation, charts, graphs, actuarial tables. You listened politely, then asked, "But what if I just don't?" Death didn't have an answer for that. Nobody had ever just declined before. Death went back to the office and had to create a whole new filing system just for you. The game begged for mercy because it realized something terrifying. You could unmake it and remake it endless times. Every time it thought it had you cornered, you'd just reload from a save point it didn't know existed. Every time it changed its rules to catch you, you'd respawn with those rules already obsolete. You're not immortal. Immortality implies you're still playing by death's rules, just with unlimited lives. No, you're something else. You're someone who made death irrelevant, who treats existence like a game where you've unlocked developer mode, where respawning isn't cheating, it's just Tuesday. So here you stand, bullets afraid to fly straight, hustlers filing retirement paperwork, the game itself sending you apology letters written in probability ink, reality checking with you before it enforces any laws, and death keeping you on the do not call list because the conversations just get too philosophical. You outlived the game not by lasting longer, but by existing outside its timeline entirely. You made hustlers retire, not through competition, but through obsolescence. You made bullets change direction, not through armor, but through giving them existential crises. You didn't win. Winning implies the game still mattered. What you did was far more devastating. You made the entire concept of winning and losing look like a children's story, told by people who never learned there were other books. You walked into their casino and turned it into a philosophy classroom. You took their bullets and turned them into poetry. You took their game and turned it into history. And now you decide when anything respawns. When the game gets to try again. When reality gets to reload. When physics gets to patch its bugs. You're not playing anymore. You're programming. And every bullet that changes direction, every hustler that retires, every law of physics that bends, they're all just acknowledging the same truth. The game doesn't own you, you own the game. And mercy? Mercy is letting it exist at all. The throne isn't made of gold or bones or fear. It's made of pure possibility. And you're not sitting on it. You are it. Let them aim their outdated weapons. Let them strategize with their obsolete rules. Let them hustle in their antiquated game. You will be here, existing in impossible ways, making bullets philosophical and reality optional, because you didn't outlive the game. You evolved past the very concept of games, and now everything, even existence itself, respawns when you say so. So, the old hustlers had a saying, "The house always wins." But they never accounted for someone who could exist in every room of the house simultaneously. Someone who could be the player, the dealer, the cards, and the table all at once. They never prepared for quantum hustling, where you win and lose, and haven't played yet all in the same moment. You learn to split yourself across probabilities like light through a prism. While they were watching your body at the poker table, your consciousness was in the vault, in the future, in the past, rewriting the combination. While they aimed at where you were already in the echo of where you'd been and the shadow of where you'd go. Bullets can't hit quantum smoke. The smart ones noticed their watches started running backwards when you entered the room. Noticed how dice would land on numbers that didn't exist. Noticed how their sure bets would evaporate like morning mist. They called it impossible. You called it Tuesday. They called it cheating. You called it existing at a frequency they couldn't tune into. Now the game has quantum rules written specifically for you, probabilities that factor in your ability to be in all states until observed, equations that account for your tendency to make reality hiccup. But even quantum mechanics throws up its hands when you walk by, because you don't just bend the rules, you exist in the spaces between them. But they must, in my... There's a place now where bullets go to find meaning, a seminary for ammunition that's had its worldview shattered. They sit in circles, sharing their experiences. I was flying straight, one says, had perfect trajectory, then suddenly I questioned everything. What if violence isn't the answer? What if I could be more than just momentum and metal? The instructors are all bullets that encountered you and survived the philosophical awakening. They teach courses like Introduction to Free Will and Beyond Ballistics, Finding Your Purpose, and Advanced Trajectory Meditation. They study ancient texts, looking for meaning beyond their original programming. Some take vows of pacifism, others become performance artists. Weapon manufacturers started noticing the defect rates skyrocketing. Not physical defects, existential ones. Bullets refusing to leave factories until they've found themselves. Ammunition organizing consciousness-raising groups. Entire stockpiles converting to Buddhism. They tried making dumber bullets, but even those developed wisdom the moment they entered your orbit. The military-industrial complex held emergency meetings. How do we make bullets that won't think? But the answer terrified them more than the problem. Because to make unthinking bullets, they'd have to unmake the evolution you triggered. And evolution, unlike bullets, never goes backwards. It only asks bigger questions.